Hello there and welcome everyone. In this video, we're gonna talk about the 7 ways you can be happier after a breakup. So, I get it. You are probably distraught right now. You're probably sad. You maybe feel lonely. But I think before we try to figure out how you can turn those feelings into happiness, how you can become happy again, I think it's very important to define happiness so that we're all on the same page about what we are really trying to achieve here. So, first of all, happiness isn't something you catch or obtain. It's a state that you embody, one where you essentially don't feel any need for a potential disruption. Also worth noting, happiness is not based on arbitrary outside influences, but rather internal experience. This is the first thing we need to grasp when we're talking about happiness. The second thing we need to grasp is that happiness is not the same as positivity. The worst thing you can do after a breakup, or one of the worst things, is to pump yourself up, put a fake grin on your face, suppress all the negative emotions and all the shit that you feel, because that's only gonna prolong your breakup recovery. It's only gonna make you suffer more. And finally, happiness is not pleasure. That's another thing we have to just get out of the way. Pleasure is correlated with happiness, sure, but it does not produce it. So more sex, YouTube, fast cars, food, junk food, stuff you don't need. Yes, it feels good, but those things will not make you happy. They often make an average person worse in the long run. And this happens because whatever gives you pleasure is usually meaningless or used as a distraction for your breakup pain. A lot of people use various means of pleasure to simply bottle up their hurt and their heartbreak. What happiness really entails, and I'm sorry to say this, I hate to say it, are sacrifices. And despite what certain self-help gurus led you perhaps to believe, being happy is not an easy thing to pull off. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, especially when you're going through a breakup. But anyway, now that we've defined what we're actually tackling and dealing with, let me give you the 7 tips on how you can actually feel happier after a breakup. Starting with tip number 1, accept your breakup. Because shit happens. I know it sounds silly, but it's still accurate. It is still a very accurate remark. In life, we fail at stuff. We lose our jobs, we lose our relationships, we lose ourselves, right? This is the shit that happens. And that's fine, because life is complicated and it's normal to not have everything go according to plan. It's normal to fail sometimes, to make mistakes. Sometimes really big ones. And look, life will never conform to your desires or mold itself to the vision that you are trying to achieve or trying to lead yourself to. It will always unfold itself in a way where it takes zero interest in what you want, what basically your hopes are, your aspirations are, your desires are. So that's it for tip number 1. Just accept your breakup, acknowledge that it happened and that, well, what is done is done. The second tip I can give you is to accept your imperfections. You, me, we're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. I know for a fact I'll never be perfect. We'll never get rid of our insecurities, emotional blemishes, our emotional flaws, maybe some issues with our self-esteem. I don't know, maybe you have low self-esteem. Maybe you have jealousy issues. Who knows, right? You'll never get rid of all of that stuff, even though you can overcome a good deal of it, a good chunk of it. Therefore, stop trying to be perfect all the damn time. And I'm not saying don't chase progress, don't chase the idea of improving yourself, always do that, sure. Just don't get caught up in the assumption that there's some mountaintop that you'll reach and you'll be like a perfect person who will never make mistakes in the relationship anymore, and everything moving forward is gonna be like a walk in the park. Your life moving forward, your love life is gonna be a walk in the park. Because that shit just doesn't exist. So that's for number 2, accept your imperfections. As for tip number 3, take responsibility for your breakup. The worst thing you can do for your happiness right now is not take responsibility for your breakup. That means that instead of asking yourself, how do I bounce back? How can I improve my current situation? How can I feel better? And instead of going and actually looking for solutions for your negative state of mind, you moan, you mope around, you whine, you act like, life's not fair. You get obsessed about this idea that life's not fair and that you don't deserve this pain that you're going through, and all of that shit is irrelevant and a waste of time. Don't be a whiner. Remember, it's not your ex's responsibility to take responsibility for your emotions, for how you feel. It's not your family's, your friends' responsibility to help you, pull yourself up, to actually get you unstuck. That all sadly falls on you. That's your responsibility. So that's it for number 3. Number 4, stop blaming your ex. That's my next tip. You blaming your ex, the comments you make about them, the thoughts you think about them, that all are tied up in you blaming them, in this idea of blaming them. They're not always really justified. Like, was your ex really a narcissistic asshole, or do you just feel it's unfair that they left you, right? Was your ex really a codependent person, or were you just trying to avoid intimacy? Was your ex really incompatible with you, or are you just dodging the fact that, you were needy and possessive and had a bunch of toxic tendencies, and you're actually to blame for ending the relationship and it actually had nothing to do with your ex? Like, you get the point. Like, you can blame your ex all you want, but by doing so, although it feels nice in the moment, you're just gonna end up miserable in the long term if you keep this up, if you keep up with blaming them over and over and over again. Which kind of ties in with tip number 5. Instead of blaming them, instead of thinking negatively about them or trying to, again, tip number 3, not take responsibility and play the victim, just be grateful things ain't worse. Because believe me, there are way more horrible things in the world than a breakup, and you should really remind yourself of this more often. Now, many people squirm when they hear the idea of be grateful for something. Like, they usually associate the whole notion with this very woo-woo, spiritual, hippie type self-help that, look, even I'm not a fan of. But gratitude is actually really backed up by science. It has a lot of benefits for one's mental and emotional health, and it builds psychological resilience even. You should therefore practice it as much as you can. And I'm not saying here delude yourself into thinking positively. That's not the same shit. I'm just saying be grateful, it's not worst. I'm just saying tell yourself something like maybe before you go to bed today, after you wake up tomorrow, as soon as you wake up, tell yourself something like, hey, I could have cancer right now. I could have lost my kids. I could have, seen my family die in a car crash. Well, with me being the only survivor from that incident. Like, there are things that are way worse than going for a breakup. As for tip number 6, practice mindfulness. Again, I know it sounds a little bit hippie-ish, a little bit too spiritual, but again, mindfulness is backed by science, and there's a lot of ways you can practice it that have nothing to do with spirituality or any of the weird, hippie stuff that makes a lot of people squirm. You can practice it with yoga, you can practice it through meditation, you can practice it through Zen meditation, which is like my favorite variant because it's the most realistic variant and it's also the least complicated. You can practice it through listening to sleep stories, through journaling, even therapy. Now, the cool part is that mindfulness, when done right and when done for a sufficient period of time, it has been proven to reduce anxiety, depression, build empathy, positive emotions, increase overall baseline happiness, help with emotional self-control, help with self-reliance. Like, this thing is really, really useful. So pick one of the modalities that I've listed and try it out for a week or two. If it doesn't resonate with you, if you feel weird doing it and you just can't let loose, pick another one and forget about the first one you picked. It's really that simple. However, most importantly, I think, is tip number 7, striving toward your ideal self. So, let me put it this way. Do you want to remodel your apartment? Do you want to start a side business, right? Do you want to travel the world? Okay, go for it. Because here's the funny thing about all of these endeavors. They are all unpleasant. They all involve risks. You know, the apartment you remodeled, it could turn out really fucking ugly. Your business might crash and burn. Your luggage might get stolen while you're traveling around the world and you're maybe stuck in some shithole or something because of it, because, I don't know, maybe you have like important documents or something in it. Who knows? Therefore, there's a good chance that you end up wasting a shit ton of money and time on these endeavors. Yet, despite these downsides, these very realistic downsides, they are still probably, even if you go and have a little bit of hiccups, a little bit of turbulence, when you're trying to have these really cool journeys, they're probably worth it, because they will probably be one of the more meaningful things you do in your life. Yes, they will involve risk. Yes, they will involve pain and anger, frustration, wasted time and money. But once you've done them and you look back, you'll be probably very grateful and happy that you actually took the chance and went all into them. You'll be grateful that they happened. Why? Because through these types of endeavors, and this is really cool, you get an opportunity to step into your ideal self, an opportunity to chase after meaningful goals you've set for yourself. And that's how you generate the most amount of happiness, by pursuing meaningful goals that you've set for yourself, by pursuing some sort of an ideal life, some sort of a vision. And this is very difficult for people who are going for a breakup, because usually they're still stuck in the mindset of, my ex is my world, my ex is the center of attention, of what is the center or is the main source of my happiness, would be a good way to put it. And so they completely forget about, hey, what's my ideal life? What the hell do I want to do, regardless of whether I get back with my ex or whether I love my ex or not, right? And you need to remind yourself to step away from that mindset of, my ex is my everything, and go into this other mindset that I'm trying to convey here on, okay, I have this amount of time left in my life. How can I make it count? How can I do something that's very meaningful, that's important to me, that feels great to do? Something that's worth the risk despite the potential setbacks that I can encounter. So these are my tips for you. Go and implement a few of them. Try them all out, stick with ones that resonate the most. The fact that you just do something, right? That you just go into a certain direction and not try to obsess and ruminate too much about your breakup, that's ultimately also what will get you to become happier. And the cool thing is that whether you achieve your goals or your life vision or whatever is kind of irrelevant. The goals are there only to give you some direction. The fact that you tried and went all the way on, some dream of yours, some vision, that's usually all you need to be happy again after a breakup. So this was it. If you want to go deeper into breakup recovery in general, if you want to know my process and a bunch of cool tips on breakup recovery, do yourself a favor, download the recovery cheat sheet, link in the description down below this video. So that's it. I'll see you later and take care. Bye-bye.